Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. You have tuned into another Real-Time Solutions webinar brought to you by the Apple Valley, Burnsville, Hastings, Lakeville, and River Heights Chamber of Commerce. Some housekeeping items for this morning. All participants are muted, so please use the Q&A feature to ask, made available on the, please use the Q&A features to ask questions, and we will get to as many as we can following the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and made available on partner websites. The goal of these webinars is to address business concerns and questions as we continue to socially distance ourselves during the pandemic. However, considering the ever-changing business practices, the partners will continue to explore ways to use technology in our Chamber's future programming. My name is Christy Barse, and I am president of the Hastings Chamber of Commerce. Today, we will hear from Jim Young with Edina Realty as he takes us through trends in residential real estate. And we will also hear from Matt Amfring from Minnesota Commercial Association of Real Estate Realtors, who will speak on trends in commercial real estate. And with that, I will turn it over to Jim Young.
Morning.
Good morning.
I think it might be easier if I just share my screen. We did prepare a short PowerPoint, and I have got maybe 20 minutes plus or minus information to go through with you. And then I'd be happy to take questions at the end or all throughout. So Christy, feel free to cut me off or ask questions if multiple things are coming in. Does that sound good? And I will say, thank you to all of you for having me today and giving me a chance to address your chamber. I know many of you, and I think, you really have a dynamic group. And I think that's key when you see 30 or 40 people that take time out of their morning to get together and sharpen their sword as they will and get better at business. I think that's a real credit to all of you. So let me just share my screen with you here. All right. So in looking at kind of what has happened in the market, I guess I would say COVID has had certainly an impact. The question will be, how long does it have an impact on our market? Will there be a big rebound? Will it have lasting effects? And I think the answer is yes, both are true. But let's kind of look at kind of what is driving from it, I guess, for lack of a better term. Just gonna move that forward. Oops, let me go back one. So a couple things that I would share with you is we're going to look today at leading and lagging indicators. And for us, usually new listings is one of the biggest leading indicators that we see. And if you look at the stat I have up, this is for the entire Twin Cities, ending in March. So when you look at the entire Twin Cities and you end in March, new listings in 2020, we had 7,200 new listings come in throughout the entire metro area. Now compare that to last year, it's up quite a bit. We haven't seen an inventory growth in the last few years, and seeing that inventory growth and yet sales activity outpacing it, we were on track to have a similar market to what we did in 2017, which is about the best market we've had for residential sales in the last 10 years for sure. So the real estate market had a lot of momentum and was very robust. And if you look at really January till the end of March, the market looked, unflappable, just as good as it really could. Active listings, of course, we're still down. We're around 8,600 versus 9,600 a year ago. And really, when you look at that, it's a factor of homes selling faster and more home sales and not coming on, not as enough new listings coming on as fast. What's hidden in these numbers, or what you don't see, is where is that gap? Well, that gap is really new construction. There has not been enough new construction throughout the metro in probably the last 5 years, to be honest with you. Now it's predicted to level off next year where new construction starts to meet pace, but that's prior to COVID hitting. So those projections are all going to change. And we're just not seeing enough new construction to really fill in that gap on existing home sales and then new home sales with new families coming into this market. The number below that might shock you a little bit, that month supply. What that means is we have enough homes that if not a single new listing came on, it would take roughly 2 months, and every home that's on the market will have found a buyer. That's unbelievably fast, and it's unheard of. This is a low point, and this clearly points to the fact that it's still really completely a seller's market. Anybody that believes it's a buyer's market, it just isn't, and it won't be for probably quite a long time. Now, I will say this, there is one price sector where it tends to be a little bit more of a buyer's market, and that's going to be above, let's say, 550, 750, depending on what part of the metro you're in. East Metro, it's a little bit closer to 550. As you come to the West Metro, you know, the Edinas and the Wayzettas, it's probably 750 and up. It is still not a buyer's market, but it balances out a lot more and become a little bit more of a buyer's market than a seller's. Pending sales, you can see there, are definitely outpacing the new listing inventory, and then median sale price, you know, in the metro is, you know, up to about 300,000. With COVID, that is dialed back a little bit, and that doesn't mean that the homes are worth less. We're just seeing kind of that mid to upper bracket sale has definitely slowed a little bit. So these next 3 stats generally surprise people a little bit, but cumulative days on market is about 60 days. So the average home is on the market about 60 days. Most people really believe that homes are selling in 5 days or a week. But if you look at all home sales, 60 days is the average today. And the average home has about 20 showings before it finds a buyer. However, almost 30% of our market has had a price reduction in the last 30 days. That's a very high number, or very low number rather, for this market. I mean, typically you're going to see that be about 35 to 45% have a price correction. And so that still tells you it's entirely a seller's market. Things are selling very close to full price. So these are the leading and lagging indicators that we typically look at. Leading indicators are listing, lagging indicators are pending sales, you know, it's stuff that has happened already and how it affects it. Now, normally a lot of listings coming in would tend to lead towards more sales, but COVID happened, and let's look at the results of the impact of that. What you're looking at here is just Dakota County, and this is the month of March from 2015 till 2020, and you can see that COVID happened. Mid-March, we went to a lockdown, I think March 17th, right around there, and even with that, almost half of our new listings came on after the lockdown started. So the month of March was kind of an anomaly. We sort of looked at it and said, wow, this is having no effect. At first, it really was having no effect on real estate. And these aren't sales, these are listings. So we continue to see new listings coming on. My personal opinion of this is, as they start to build and watch more media, more fear builds, and more sellers decided to kind of wait out. So let's take a look at April. So you go into April, here's April numbers for 2015 to 2020 in April. Listings really fell off a cliff, you know, about a 30% reduction to listings coming on. And you can see that that's that consumer fear. This is that seller going, you know what, I'm going to wait. I don't want to move. You know, what if I don't find a job, or what if I don't have a job, and we sell our home, where will we live? Those are the thoughts that went through many sellers' minds. And of course, they're thinking back to the 2008 to 2010 real estate bubble that burst, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, here we go again. This is going to disrupt real estate completely. So really on a turn of a dime, probably about the second week of April, we saw a major slowdown in listings coming in to all of the multiple listing service, but specifically in Dakota County. Now keep in mind, Dakota County has a lot of new construction, and that's going to be that Lakeville and further side, you know, further south metro, tons of new construction. That's a real strong point for your numbers. Now, if we take a look at May, we continue to see new listings, you know, add a little bit of a drop. What this is a little bit misleading is these numbers are only through, you know, not even 3 weeks of May. I think when it all boils out, May is going to look better by trend comparison than April did. And the reason I tell you that is I can only look at our internal numbers at Edina, and we're keeping pace with last year's May in terms of sales, and listings will start to come back and follow as fear starts to dial back down. As the fear dials back down and people bring their homes on, we're certainly going to see those ratchet up. And I also think people kind of knowing that their job is secure, to say, you know what, my company's made their adjustments, I'm going to keep my job. I think we can sell and we can go buy, you know, a home. So May's numbers, you know, this is a little bit misleading just because we don't have full data for May, but you can see it's certainly trended down due to COVID. Now, I shared with you before seller's market. Some people might ask, well, how do you know what a buyer market is and a seller market is? This is how it's defined in real estate terms. It's defined by something we call absorption rate. And that means if no other listings came on, how fast would it take for the entire listing inventory to be absorbed into a sale? And in 2018, it was about 1.8 months, very, very low. 2019, 2 months. 2020, it's trending even faster, and that's largely because sales picked up. Inventory was picking up faster than the last prior years, but sales was outpacing that. So again, through the first quarter of this year, sales were really off the charts for almost every company. And if you look down below, anytime you have an absorption rate under 4 months, it's a seller's market. 4 months or less, seller's market. So you can see from this, we're not even 50% there towards what we would call a balanced market. And that 5 to 6 month range, that's a balanced market. We saw that just after the crash. If you look at 2009 to 11, you started to see a little bit of a balanced market. But even then, it had some imbalances because of lack of inventory. When there's low inventory, it's just really hard to balance that out. And again, the problem today is very low inventory. And that's also driven by not a lot of new construction that's in the market to balance that out. Pending sales are a lagging indicator. They tell us what happened. They don't tell us as much about what's going to happen. But if you look at pending sales for March, realistically, we were outperforming prior years, even with COVID. You know, half of the month of March had a lockdown and we were outperforming the prior year. That's how strong and how much momentum the real estate market had. If you look at pending sales for April, again, that's where we see things kind of fall off the cliff. They take a pretty sharp dive, and most of that was in that middle 2 weeks of April. Pretty sharp dive, a lot of fear and a lot of pullback in the market. We saw generally a higher than average cancellation rate, you know, home cancellation rate where people are under contract and want to back out. Traditionally is going to run at about 8%. When inventory gets really low, it tends to trend up and get to about 12%. And that's because they jump, they buy a home, they do an inspection, then they get cold feet and they back out. But when COVID hit, we were hitting 20% on cancellation rates on a pretty much a daily basis. And that subsided after about 2 to 3 weeks where the fear got through itself. And now we're kind of back down to those traditional, you know, 8 to 12% range that you normally would see. But pending sales definitely hit a pretty big drop. Now, May, again, this is a little bit misleading because it's only data through May 19th. But I would tell you, we think that this is going to have a pretty good rise, probably not as steep and as fast as anybody would like, but this is going to have a pretty good rise. And the reason I can tell you that is for Edina Realty, for our numbers, we're within less than 150 sales of the prior year's May. So we're having a similar May to what we would have had in 2018, let's say, and 2019 in those years. And we're going to definitely probably come pretty close to hitting our goal. If that's the case, the rest of the market tends to follow us a little bit as the larger broker. They'll catch up and they'll have stronger Junes. But right now, I think May is going to have a pretty good leveling off. But it really depends on those two things, lack of fear and confidence in their job. So what did we do about COVID? How did we react as an industry and as a company? Well, You may not know this, but the real estate lobby is a very large lobby in terms of, nationally. They kind of consider us to be one of the 5 largest lobbies, believe it or not. plenty of funding for it. We're just behind the teachers union in terms of size and contributions. And when you look at this, we were able to immediately get in front of this with the state and say, we need to be considered an essential business, or critical sector is the term they use. And we will immediately do kind of our own forced compliance on things if you can just let us keep selling homes. So a lot of the larger brokers got together and really petitioned through our association to the governor to say, look, we're going to immediately stop doing live open houses. That's step one. We will try to move all staff from our offices home. Even though agents are independent contractors, they're going to come and go, but our staff are not in the office. We will try to limit live showings. If it's not uncommon in a busy market that there'll be 4 showings at a house at 5 o'clock. Well, immediately we changed our showing appointment software so that it would be half-hour time windows and no more than 1 party in the home at a time. So with some of these things that you see here, and a lot of just common sense things, and giving sellers instructions to turn on all lights, giving buyers instructions not to turn off anything, those things are really simple, but it's not people touching things in homes is what it came down to. And when we did that, they said, yep, you have a good plan. Plus real estate is essential. People need to have places to live and move. And they left this sector of real estate largely alone. And it's been good for us. It is pretty interesting though with our closings. Closings is title closings are a huge reason we were also considered an essential business. When you look at somebody with a loan, okay, they've lent money, they've done a lock that's all tied into Fannie and Freddie. In most cases with residential sales, those sales had to close. So our title closers, our title workers really didn't get to go home. They had to keep doing closings, but they had to do them with extraordinary measures. We put in large table shield guards in the rooms. We eliminated anybody but the client that's closing from the room. So just the closer and the client in the room. We allow the agents to be in the room on a virtual basis with an iPad or FaceTime. Our closers typically had worn masks. And as a company, we became a paperless company in the matter of about 14 days. We switched everything over to online things. And we even have the ability for drive-up closings. Families that didn't want to come into the building, we prepared all documents, and we became car hops. We went right out to their car and served them their closing documents, in a folder, and they signed things. We notarized them because we were there witnessing it. We took the documents in, processed everything, and sent them on their way. So we've done everything we can to limit that and be smart in terms of our business practice. But it got pretty creative pretty fast. Moving forward, what do we think we're going to see? Well, there's been such a push from our builders, because when builders can't have open houses, their business really slows down quite fast. And I think that's part of what you're seeing a little bit in Dakota County. And there's been a lot of pressure to restart open houses in a live basis. Well, we first stopped doing opens, they became virtual. Agents started holding them online using tools like Facebook Live or YouTube Watch, any of those. And they were broadcasting their opens because people couldn't come into their home. That worked. It worked really well. And now you're seeing people really petitioning for live opens again. So what happened? The governor's office and the state association for realtors came to kind of some common agreements on, yep, live opens won't violate the stay safe order now that the stay at home has expired. And we've set out some processes for doing opens. Limiting 10 people into the home at any one time is a big one, and that includes the agent. But I would also tell you that 10 people in one open house is a rare thing as it sits, but not always for new construction. And you're going to see a modified parade of homes happening here in the next couple weeks in many markets. So you're going to see that happening, but they're going to have to monitor how many people are in the home at a time. They've talked about creating arrows on the floor for flow so people don't walk, against each other. so they could social distance. Little things like sanitizing after showing, sanitizing doorknobs, any precaution they can take, they've really they've really tried to do. And again, live open houses are going to start up here within the next week. Within the next week. What do I think is going to happen? Well, COVID restrictions are loosening. I saw that even today the governor is going to share his plans for how restaurants can reopen and things with public accommodation can reopen. And I'm interested to hear that. And I think there's been a lot of pressure to do that, notwithstanding what happened over in Wisconsin. Obviously, that is trickling into the pressure of what we do. June historically has been the busiest sales month in real estate for Dakota County. I don't think you're going to see a typical June this year. I think you're going to see June less, maybe on a great side, maybe less 10%. On a bad side, maybe less 20%. But you're probably about 10% off, and that would be the most optimistic view I could give. But I will tell you that Dakota County is considered one of the top 5 counties for real estate activity pre-pandemic, really, in Minnesota. And when you look at that, that's a strong sign, and a lot of it is driven by your new construction. So is there expectations of market rebound? There is, and a lot of that is fueled by the low interest rates. It's just hard to pass it up. But I will tell you that a smart business person is looking at refinancing, and our refinancing applications to Edina Realty Mortgage, a typical month we might have a few hundred, and in the month of April we saw something in the order of 550 mortgage applications, and a lot of those are refinances. So people are looking to rescale their debt and just kind of be smart about what they're doing. I mean, I can speak to myself. I wanted to make sure that any investment properties I had were really financially in sound shape. So I did 2 things. One, I started by refinancing them and getting them to the lower rates and locking in lower rates. And then the second thing I did is, I met with, I'm insured with American Family with, actually, I think one of your members, Tony Ciro, who has a fantastic American Family branch down there in Hastings and serves much of Dakota County. Tony reached out to me and we did a review of all the policies I have and found out where I could save money, where I needed more coverage, where I needed less. And all in all, I came out in much better shape financially. And so I got my house in order. And I think that's what the pandemic did for a lot of people. Having said that, we got to see, what will the pent up demand be? Are there a lot of buyers just willing to jump right back in? Maybe. It's going to depend on jobs. If they don't feel certain in their job, they will not buy a home. And then that's going to also depend on what the sellers feel. If the sellers feel confident in putting their home on, or are they afraid for people to come through their home? Now, thankfully, we see a lot of people showing signs of confidence, and they are bringing their homes on in a pretty good pace, and that's good. But it's really going to come down to what's the long and short-term effect of the scare of my job. If that happens, that if confidence happens, real estate will lead us out of COVID in terms of the economy. Because as people buy homes, they buy furniture, they buy appliances, they buy new carpet. And I think all of us have seen, Home Depot, Menards, Fleet Farm, packed, right? So people definitely have confidence, but that's yet to see. Are they staying in their home, or are they going to those stores to improve their home so they can make it more saleable? Time will tell. I guess we don't know. The one last thing I want to just call out is the FHA's forbearance rules came out yesterday, and it's a really positive sign. And what this speaks to, the rules that they came out to are this. When COVID hit, they made sweeping announcements that you can't be evicted, you can't be foreclosed if you stop paying your mortgage, right? You could file for forbearance with your bank. Typically, in lending, if somebody filed for forbearance, that gets treated a lot like a foreclosure or like a missed payment. And it can really damage someone's credit, sometimes for years. Coming out of the short sale time frame in 2008 to 2010, they shortened that down to about a 2-year healing process, which a lot of people felt was way too fast. Hey, if you got foreclosed, if you lost your home, you should have to sit out the traditional, 6-7 years in some cases. with the current forbearance ruling that came out yesterday, if I filed for forbearance in my home, but yet I kept making my payments, I can move out of forbearance and be able to buy or refinance immediately. Why? Because I kept making my payments. And the fact that I filed for forbearance will not hurt me. However, if I filed for forbearance and let's say I didn't make some payments and I set up a payment plan with my bank, if I bring myself current and I make payments consistently for 3 months following that, I can refinance and buy right away again too. So those are very encouraging rules for real estate. I know that's a little bit inside baseball for everyone, but what that really says is there's not going to be really long-term penalties for those that had short-term job loss and tried to protect their asset by filing for forbearance. So all in all, I would tell you that we are very optimistic at Edina, and I'm happy to take any questions on what's happening in real estate. I'll stop sharing my screen now, but I'm happy to take questions. Christy, anything you got out there?
We do have one question, and then I think we will transition to the commercial side. And then if you're able to stay with us, Jen, we can have some more questions at the end if that works for you.
Sure. Yes, absolutely.
So the one question that came out was, have you seen or did you see the news story on Care 11 last night about the industry and fees?
I did. Yeah, I did see it, and kind of, what I would say is really three things. One, Edina Realty is not named in that lawsuit, and so as a general rule, we don't comment on industry lawsuits that are against some of the large national companies, predominantly because we're not involved. Now, our parent company who holds some of those other companies, they have an interest in that, but Edina Realty is not named in that suit, even though it originates out of Minnesota. So that kind of first and foremost. Secondly, I think as an Edina Realty former agent, before I became a broker and then a regional manager, we're very transparent in what we charge, and it really hasn't really changed. The other thing I would say is this story is about 1.5 years old. That lawsuit was filed a long time ago, and it'll probably be somewhere on the basis of maybe 7 to 11 years before that it shakes itself out, because there's local and national components to it. It's a class action, but to some degree, it's really the story is a little bit misleading in my opinion, because everybody sees what they're paying both at closing and when they sign their agreement. And at Edina, we're extremely transparent about that. But it's not really a new story. As they said, even on the news last night, they started working on it long before COVID, and it's kind of old news in terms of the real estate circle. But it's been tried before, I would say, this exact approach, and it failed at that point as well. So, but thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. That was encouraging information and very informative. And we will take additional questions for you at the end if that works.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see I'm in the same building as Matt. He's just on the floor above me. And we're looking out the same set of shades, but we're not in the same space.
That's fantastic. It's meant to be.
Socially distant by 1 floor.
Right. Well, that's great. Thanks again, Jim. We are going to transition now to the commercial side of things, and we are really excited to have Matt Amfrang, the Executive Director of MNCAR, with us to walk us through some trends in the commercial real estate industry. So thank you. We'll turn it over to you, Matt.
There we go. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we are.
The MNCAR one? Okay. Yeah, I was going to say that same thing, Jim. Our blinds are the same, almost set to the same height and everything. So, greetings from Edina. All right. So, yeah, I'm Matt Amfrang, Executive Director of MNCAR, the Commercial Association for Real Estate. I'm a little different than Jim, where he's a practitioner. He is working in transactional. I just run the association, so I'm going to do my best to share with you, what we see going on, and maybe provide some anecdotal information that I've been hearing from some of our brokers. Just real quick, for those who are unfamiliar with what MNCAR is, we're the Commercial Association of Real Estate and Realtors. We have about 1,300 members, and about a third of those, a little more than a third, are Realtor members, so they're affiliated with the National Association and the State Association, but they're all licensed the same Real estate licensees in the state of Minnesota are licensed the same whether they're residential or commercial. But we're primarily made up of those people who just play in the commercial arena only. What we have, our association runs an exchange, which is, as we try and explain it to people who are unfamiliar with commercial real estate and how it works, an exchange is a commercial information exchange, but it's the kind of the equivalent to an MLS on how the residential practitioners do their work. But some of the requirements are different about when it goes up, how long they stay up, price changes, all that type of information. It's very real time, and we have a lot of background on properties throughout the state of Minnesota. We do have researched areas, and then there are areas in which people just put their listings up, as we are a statewide organization. Oh, that's an old slide that shouldn't have been on there, but it is a statewide database. We're kind of asked about where commercial real estate in the metropolitan area is active, where we see the most activity going on. And although in the January to current day transactions, these dots indicate transactions that have occurred since the first of the year. Most active along 94, 494, West End, Woodbury, and downtown Minneapolis. So we're seeing that even up to current day, that anything that was kind of in the pipeline did close. Leases did get executed, and the market has remained fairly active. And I say that with the caveat that it's what was in the pipeline for the brokers and their clients, much as what Jim had to say. For Dakota County, these are the active listings that we have in our exchange right now. But just as far as your universe goes, actually this is the full universe of the properties that we have available, and data on. So the office, industrial, retail, and land is what I was asked to kind of take a focus on. But these are total properties. On the industrial office, this is what you have for space in Dakota County that people are either listing or are occupying right now. So you see in the kind of the southwestern portion of Dakota County, there's huge opportunities for land and development, depending on what uses people are looking for and what kind of municipal services are available to the potential tenant. Some terms that I'll be going over. I do this just because I'm uncertain of what people's familiarity might be with commercial real estate. So as I'm talking about what's going on, available space is space that is for lease or sale that may not have an existing tenant, or somebody may be moving out. Office class is designated usually in A, B, and C, A being the highest, C the lowest, but that doesn't mean less quality necessarily. It's just, or wherever location might be, it might be a fine location, but the age and construction materials and amenities and other factors influence that categorization. Vacancy is an entirely vacant space available for lease. Absorption is the net change in space in the given market. That would mean We calculate absorption based on when a tenant takes the keys and moves in. And then tenant improvements, TI. These are improvements that the landlord will make to a property to entice somebody to come into their property or build it into their lease rates. And like it says here, that value is usually amortized over 5 to 10 years. So when a lease rate is determined, sometimes there's dollars built into that long-term lease that doesn't. So some of these lease rate might be higher or lower depending on what kind of TIs they might be asking for. Concessions, tools that they're used to attract a tenant, free rent, and that's what we're seeing right now. Some things occurring in free rent and lease extensions and kind of redrafting of leases in some terms. Oh, I keep hitting my mouse here. CAM is the fee that gets built into a lease price that covers, if you've got to plow a parking lot, maintain elevators, lobby areas, all those areas necessary for the tenant and the other tenants in a multi-unit or multi-tenant building. Gross number will come down to all the costs for the entire lease, including taxes and CAM and the actual real estate. And then that triple net is when it's broken out, you will see the CAM and taxes broken out separately of the lease rate. So we will see in what I have to show here just some lease rates without taxes. So and I too will watch if there are any questions, or if Christy, something comes up and you just want to interrupt and tell me somebody's got something, I'll be happy to see if I can answer it for you. But as we stand right now in Metro wide, Class A office at the end of Q1 2020, we're grossing between $32 and $34.50, which is up slightly from previous years, not a lot. In many cases, when you see the gross lease rates rising in some areas of the metropolitan area, they're due to rises in taxes. Landlords aren't necessarily seeing a great deal of increase, and they haven't for a long time. But in 19 and 20, they have seen maybe $1, $2, $3 increase in space, but that's been a long time coming. Lease rates are highest in the Minneapolis CBD and the West Metro, and lowest in the Northeast. Right now, the metropolitan area has almost 4 million square feet available of Class A office space, which is a 8.9% vacancy. And this will vary across multiple locations. Like I mentioned, the hotter areas, 494, 94, somewhat lower. Downtown St. Paul. Downtown St. Paul is actually fine on Class A. They have lots of vacancy in B. Then I just went and looked at where Dakota County fell in these numbers, and at the end of Q1, they were grossing $24 or $25, $25.50 gross, and that's up from some previous years. Not a lot, but up a little bit. Right now, at 8.8% vacancy, 813,000 square feet available. The Vikings development in Egan has kind of skewed Dakota County stats in across all sectors, actually, office and retail. because they have a lot available, a lot that they will build, so a lot that they're marketing. So that area itself takes up a lot of opportunity for Dakota County. Excuse me. Class B, so where you start to see the price drop a little bit. 23 to 24 and a half again or 24 and a quarter. But Q3 2019 was the highest in the last year that the Metro was getting for Class B space. Again, it's consistent with Class A, where the Minneapolis CBD and the West Metro are the most in demand. Vacancy in Class B, see 9 million, 14.9%. Dakota County also had a high performing year. I think that a lot of activity on 494 with at 494 and like Highway 13 area. And Dakota County, almost 500,000 square feet available in a 9.8% vacancy. Not unhealthy. Metro Class C. These Class C spaces in the Metro are, in some cases, are getting few and far between. That used to be much higher, but as there have been a lot of conversions to multifamily and condos. Well, not so much condos in the recent, but at least apartments. The Metro Class C has declined in its universe quite a bit, but there's your gross lease rates around $20, and then with a 11% vacancy in the Metro, and about $17 a square foot in Dakota County, with a very low Class C vacancy of 3.5%. That's just mainly because Dakota County, many parts of it are more recently developed, and not a lot of old inventory hanging around in Dakota County. Another area we track, and our brokers are very active, is in industrial. And industrial has seen a surge in the last few years as distribution and last mile distribution has really taken hold in this new kind of economy we've got going on, as well as some new manufacturing returning to the market, and a lot of spec properties being built. So we track different kind of sectors of industrial, with warehouse, distribution / warehouse, flex warehouse, which is where you might be able to have an office and warehouse in the same facility, and where we're but the warehouse and office market grows is kind of the highest, where that you can have office and warehouse. That flex spaces seems to be in more demand. Although it looks like a lot of space available, it's only 4.8% of the market at 10 million square feet available right now across the Metro. Lease rates are lower, then with tax and CAM running about $3.25 to $4 a square foot. So West Metro, Southwest Metro, seeing the highest, Northeast lowest, but really when you break it down, they were really separated by pennies across the market. Dakota County has some of the highest industrial availability. The industrial universe in Dakota County is very high. It's a strong concentration of industrial land. I did this analysis for another chamber, actually, a couple years ago. They wanted to compare themselves to Dakota County, and I was amazed at the amount of industrial space that even exists in the Egan, Mendota area. Incredible. It's all hidden, tucked away where you can't see it. But the same demand types apply in Dakota County as they do across the metro, and very competitive. Dakota County is very competitive with the rest of the metro, and even has a lower vacancy rate than across the metro. So if you find a industrial development opportunity in Dakota County in the right location, it's probably not a bad thing. So retail lease rates, as anybody can imagine, location is the most important. We track the regional malls, strip malls, freestanding, big box, neighborhood, lifestyle, live work type. But metro wide averages $9.16 a square with a range of $5.32 to $16.88. Gross rents $26.34 with a range of $18.25 to $36.21. Where you see that high $36 a square foot price is going to be mainly in MOA or downtown Minneapolis, Galleria. Those were the highest retail lease rates are made. Dakota County really doesn't vary that much from the rest of the metropolitan area at all when you look at the types of retail, and when you compare those different retail lease types on what they're getting. And the vacancy holds almost metro wide at 7.5% to 8% for now. I think that is retail is probably going to be what we believe we'll see the biggest change in after this situation we've been forced to deal with. I did see that some stores beginning to open, but foot traffic was relatively light. Inconsistency in malls on what stores are open. Some of these corporate-owned stores have their own policies that they're operating under with their employees. Most times in a retail center, within the contract, there are requirements for people to be open at different times or when the mall is open, but I don't think any landlords right now are forcing that issue, but letting the owners of the retail businesses help determine when they believe it's going to be healthy for them to open up. What do we have for the future? And again, these are not statistical by any means, but really things that I'm hearing from our brokers in the commercial arena is that what they have going on right now is a lot of what they're deeming free work, taking a look at where people's leases are, restaurants, looking at the terms of the lease, and if they're unable to pay any rent for a period of time, that they might be extending leases out and spreading out that cost and extending a term, meaning adding months on at the end of the lease and extending leases as mentioned here. And then we see companies that that have found that they maybe don't need as much space, that they can handle their employees working remotely for a while. This may take a little bit of time to get comfortable with having groups of people back within it. There is a spider the size of a quarter walking across one of my other screens here. Hold on a second. Ugh. Anyway, I don't like spiders. So they're finding that maybe they may not need as much space. The speculation is that the trend in the co-working spaces might really suffer in the near future. People will want to be seeing that they have more controls over who may be coming and going. You know, the co-working spaces where you may lease an individual space with an office might fare differently than those that share an open space. So we'll see how that plays out. Then there are many companies out there that want to have all of their employees showing up for work, but they're finding that given some spacing requirements for the near future, they are in need of a larger space. They're in need of to building out individual office spaces where they had the hoteling and space sharing going on. There are, as they make their determinations, they're definitely looking at being smarter on what common areas people might share versus having a single gathering space or kitchen / cafeteria, that they may have to have multiple locations where individuals will be designated to go, just to try and keep people maybe a little more isolated but still together. Throughout the course of this second quarter, people have been still pretty active. There, anything in the pipeline, like I showed before, up until May 15th, and then the quarter will close, of course, at the end of May, and many of the transactions people had are still being executed. Much like the residential, well, differently than the residential, we don't have a lot of open houses. There may be broker open houses. We haven't had any of those going on. The showings have still been taking place. They've where there used to be maybe 8 people showing up for a walkthrough of a property, that number is diminished to maybe 2 or 3, plus a broker and maybe the landlord if they wanted to come. But the tours still have been occurring, and there are things in the works, but definitely not to the level that we've had and saw in 2019. I guess what we will see is Q2 closings and leases will mostly be executed, but I think that our brokers are going to feel the pinch quite a bit more at the end of the year, Q3, Q4, than they are currently feeling now. Some of them. So that's kind of what I've got. I'd be happy if there is any question. I'd be happy to see if I can answer or find one for you, or make one up.
Did you kill the spider? That's what I want to know.
I don't know where it is. I just brushed it off the screen so it wouldn't stare at me anymore.
Thank you, Matt. That was.
I sent it down to Jim.
We do have 2 questions that popped up in our Q&A. The first one says, what's your expectation for the CRE demand post-COVID?
I think that maybe that came up before I was talking about on that last slide, but it depends on the user. It depends on how their company functions. Industrial, we may see some more manufacturing come back. Their reliance on the supply chain might change, and where there's opportunity to maybe move things back to domestic production, maybe we'll be looking at how to do that, and might make more sense for those who got pinched in the supply chain and are unable to produce things based on not the availability of parts, or a supplier needing to get parts to another person, and relying on international might not be a long-term solution for them any longer. So industrial might see an uptick. In the office space, we just don't we don't know that people have their opinions. That's what I tried to share a little, that some might be looking for less or might want to be getting out of it. Some might want to look for more. So maybe there'll be some kind of a balance that ends up being healthy.
It's hard to predict right now. Okay, the second question was for retail space. What range of rate do you see in 1,000 square foot space compared to a 10,000 square foot space?
So if one, it depends on where and what kind of use was that? Did they say office?
Retail.
A retail space. Oh, well, there's a variable in that. It would be, I could easily find that information out for somebody if they're looking in I'd have to spend a little time on our database to kind of get an idea of what that person would want. If you have that, back to my, there's my email address right there. If you want to email me your question or about where, or whoever that might be, about where and what, I'd be happy to do that. Another thing I was going to say is we do have on our database, which might be interesting to chambers and whatnot. We do direct feeds, and that we can geographically break down. So if you had a website that you wanted to say, here's what's available in my, we partner with a lot of economic development agencies like Progress Plus, and we kind of define an area, and so people can look at what listings are available in those areas, and so you can do some research. But the other, sorry for skipping to this, but I really wanted to show this. On search public commercial listings, we have our whole database and all of the listings available on that public search, and you can do that search like on that retail with some of those parameters, choose a geographic area, anything available, and many times the lease rates will pop up. The information is very limited, so if there's more detail, it's really designed at getting in touch and utilizing a broker to dig in and get more of that information for you. But there is a public search available for people if they wanted to take a peek.
Perfect. Well, I think we are going to wrap up. We're just about to 9 o'clock. So I do want to thank both Jim and Matt. That was excellent information on the residential and commercial side. And I really we all appreciate you taking the time today to walk through that with us. This webinar will be recorded and published on all the partner chamber websites. So for those that want to get in contact with Jim and Matt, I know that they had their contact information on their slides. We hope that you will join us for our next real-time solution webinar, which is this Friday, May 22nd, and we will be covering the health and safety requirements in the workplace. This webinar was provided in partnership with the Apple Valley, Burnsville, Hastings, Lakeville, and River Heights Chamber of Commerce, and we hope you have a Chamber of Commerce kind of day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.